Hey guys, tonight we embark on a winding ascent up mist-cloaked peaks as you nestle under your blankets. Imagine cool mountain air brushing your cheeks, and the distant drip of spring water echoing through rocky amphitheaters. You probably won't survive this without craving a brisk hike, but that's the price of adventure for free. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing at the base of an Andean ridge where winds carry whispers of ancient chants and the scent of damp stone. In Inca cosmology, mountain springs, called muqarnas, served as portals to the spirit world and sources of life-giving water. Mainstream historical fact: the Inca revered springs as gifts from the water goddess Mama Cocha, often building stone niches to honor these sacred sites. Historians still argue whether every pagina was state-sanctioned or if many local springs maintained independent shrines, but the ritual importance is undeniable. A fringe tidbit floats in on the breeze. Some shamans reportedly rubbed llama fur on their nostrils before inhaling spring mist, believing it amplified the water's healing properties, a practice no modern spa would dare replicate. You probably won't survive telling that to your allergy-prone cousin, so let's keep it our secret. As you step onto a narrow trail lined with tufted grasses, your sandals whisper against compacted earth. The path leads you to a shallow pool, where crystalline water spills gently over flat stones, pooling into a basin carved by generations of pilgrim footsteps. The surface shimmers like liquid glass under a pale moonlight you imagine dancing above. Joke 1: if water could wink, this spring would wink at you before every dip. Near the pool, smooth pebbles are arranged in concentric circles, offerings from weary travelers seeking relief from coughs, fevers, or wandering spirits. You lean down, feeling the cool spray against your fingertips. A distant condor cry punctuates the hush, reminding you that you're not alone. The mountains themselves seem to watch. Legends say that even the slightest sip from such a pagina could soothe ailments of body and mind, but Inca priests conducted careful rituals before granting access. You imagine donning a feathered cloak and stepping through smoke from sacred coca leaves to purify your spirit. Historians still argue whether coca purification preceded every healing ceremony or only served elite pilgrims. But either way, you sense the gravity of each ritual step. Joke 2: if you ever misplace your keys, maybe ask a pagina spring, they've seen everything. Nearby, a polished stone altar bears a shallow trench filled with rose-tinted clay mixed with crushed herbs like muña and lantan. Fringe practitioners claim the clay amplified mineral content in spring water, creating a restorative mud bath. You scrape a tiny pinch between your fingers, feeling its cool grit. You probably won't survive trading your spa's fancy mud wrap for this rugged Andean blend, but you might just sleep better afterward. As you sip the iced mountain water, iced by alpine chill, rather than modern refrigerators, you note a crisp mineral tang that somehow feels like a promise. Mainstream historical fact: chemical analyses of Andean spring waters reveal high concentrations of calcium and magnesium, which natives believed strengthened bones and calm restless spirits. Historians still argue whether those minerals delivered medical benefits or merely reinforced spiritual narratives, but here in your throat they taste like reassurance. The trail climbs higher, revealing a carved stone staircase, adorned with faded glyphs, geometric patterns, representing flowing rivers and star maps. You pause on a landing, catching your breath. and recalling the pool's serene shimmer below. Callback unlocked that gentle drip now echoes in your memory a comforting mantra. Joke 3. If stone steps could tell jokes, they'd probably groan every time you trip. Around you, moss and lichen cling to rock faces and tiny orchids peer from crevices, botanical guardians of the spring. You feel each inhale fill your lungs with mist-laden air, scented faintly of wild mint and earth. The path winds onward, promising deeper discoveries of herbs and waters yet unseen. As you continue, carry with you the Pacarina's hush, the mountain's whispered promise of healing, and the gentle pulse of centuries-old devotion. You emerge onto broad stone terraces that cascade down the mountainside like giant steps carved into the sky, each one a living garden, nourished by glacial meltwater channels. Imagine the gentle hiss of water flowing through narrow canals, feeding rows of neatly arranged beds, where emerald green herbs sway in the breeze. You probably won't survive resisting a deep breath of that fresh herbal air, but it's worth the risk. These are the Royal Herb Garden's exclusive domains of the Sapa Inca and his most trusted healers, where medicinal plants thrived under careful watch. Mainstream historical fact: the Sapa Inca maintained imperial botanical gardens at sites like Pisac and Tipon, cultivating hundreds of plant species for food, ritual, and medicine. Historians still argue how centralized these gardens were versus scattered plots managed by local Caracas, but the sheer scale of imperial horticulture speaks volumes. A fringe tidbit tickles your curiosity. Some records whisper that high-born courtiers carried tiny pouches of powdered maca in their robes, believing it enhanced dreams during royal siestas. You probably won't survive a caffeine-free bedtime if you test that, so maybe stick to chamomile. Stepping onto the first terrace, you feel the warmth of the stone beneath your sandals as the sun climbs higher. On either side, raised beds brim with rows of coca plants, their glossy leaves nodding in unison. Beyond them, clusters of muña, with its bright green oval leaves and minty aroma, form neat hedges. You recall the cool spring mist from Section 1 callback unlocked and notice how each channel splits gracefully to irrigate specific plots, an ancient drip system perfected by Inca engineers. Joke 1: if herbs could gossip, they'd complain about their endless spa treatments. On the next level, you find rows of maca plants, their yellow flowers bobbing atop slender stalks. A court herbalist kneels beside them, carefully digging up a small, knobby root. You watch as she brushes away soil, revealing the pale tuber that warriors prized for stamina. Mainstream historical fact: Maca lepidum, Mayeni, has been cultivated above 4,000 meters since pre-Inca times for its nutritional and energizing properties. Historians still argue whether maca's reputation as an aphrodisiac was an ancient myth or later colonial embellishment, but its value in high-altitude environments is undeniable. The herbalist presses a slice of fresh maca root to your lips. It tastes earthy with a faint sweetness, like parsnip dusted in honey. You swallow, feeling a gentle warmth spread through your chest. Fringe tidbit: some palace gossip claimed maca-infused broths were secretly reserved for the Inca emperor's consorts, rumored to inspire particularly vivid dreams. You probably won't survive snooping into royal boudoir, so let that one stay in the garden hush. Joke 2: if roots could applaud, maca would stand and cheer you on every morning. Moving upward, you pass a section dedicated to plantain, its broad leaves shining under the sun. Healers harvested these to crush into poultices for cuts and insect bites, a simple remedy you can almost feel soothing your skin. Mainstream historical fact: Plantain leaves contain aucubin and flavonoids with anti-inflammatory qualities, qualities recognized by Andean healers long before modern pharmacology. Historians still argue how formally these remedies were recorded versus passed along orally, but here the efficacy speaks for itself. Nearby rows of Pachamama flowers, native orchids, used for topical pastes, nod their crimson blooms toward the sky. You pause, inhaling their delicate fragrance that hints of rosewater and summer meadows. Fringe tidbit. Some shamans claimed that Pachamama petals, when steeped overnight in spring water, glowed faintly by firefly light, a trick of bioluminescent microbes perhaps, but enchanting nonetheless. You probably won't survive chasing glowing tea petals around your kitchen, so maybe stick to bedside lamps. Joke 3. If flowers could hum lullabies, Pachamama would be the lead soprano. As you continue across the terraces, you note how walkways are lined with stone markers inscribed with plant names and uses an early botanical index. You run a fingertip across the glyph for muña, its curves echoing the leaf's silhouette. Mainstream historical fact: Inca scholars used quipus knotted strings to record everything from census data to agricultural schedules, and likely documented garden inventories this way. Historians still argue how detailed quipu records were in practice, since few examples survive intact, but their presence hints at a data-rich botanical tradition. The final terrace holds the queen of the gardens, a circular bed of bright yellow totora reeds and clusters of koa flowers, sacred incense plants. Here, royal healers crushed koa to release aromatic smoke, believed to clear spiritual blockages. You lean in, breathing through your nose, catching faint wafts of smoke that remind you of distant hearth fires. The callback unlocked that incense aroma mirrors the coca smoke purification you imagine in the spring. You step back to take in the panorama tier upon tier of cultivated life, water channels, weaving patterns of silver light and the distant Andes peaks, standing witness. The gardens feel alive, a living pharmacy, humming in green and gold. As you descend toward the next discovery, carry with you the echo of flowing water, the gentle rustle of muña leaves, and the knowledge that these terraces bridge the natural and the divine. You slip through a low stone archway, carved with wave motifs, and step into a circular grotto where the air smells of damp earth and sacred smoke. Kneeling pilgrims line the perimeter, their voices hushed in prayer as they gaze upon a bubbling spring at the center. You probably won't survive cutting in line here without offending at least 3 local spirits, so take your place respectfully at the back. Inca priests conducted elaborate sacred spring rituals, combining water libations, coca offerings, and finely ground herbal pastes to invoke healing blessings from mountain deities. Mainstream historical fact chroniclers noted that Aquinas were focal points for communal ceremonies during crises like epidemics or droughts, with the Sapa Inca sometimes presiding. Historians still argue whether the emperor attended every major rite or delegated lesser springs to regional Caracas, but the ceremonies united communities under shared belief. A fringe tidbit drifts on the incense-laced breeze. Some tell of secret midnight rites where priests painted their faces with muña-infused clay to commune with ancestors under moonlight, a practice never officially recorded, but whispered in hillside villages. You probably won't survive wandering into that midnight circle uninvited, so stick to daylight blessings. At the grotto center, a narrow channel funnels crystal water into a shallow stone basin. An elderly priest in a feathered mantle raises his golden chalice high and pours a slow, steady stream back into the spring, an act symbolizing reciprocity to Mama Cacha. You watch droplets catch the torchlight, fracturing into tiny rainbows that dance across the grotto walls. Joke 1. If water could laugh, these droplets would chuckle at every reflection. Next, the priest lights a bundle of coca leaves wrapped in totora fibers. A plume of aromatic smoke curls upward, carrying prayers written in every curling tendril. Pilgrims lean forward, letting the smoke brush their foreheads, believed to carry illnesses away. Mainstream historical fact: coca smoke was a central component in Andean rituals, used for divination and minor healing long before colonial disruptions. Historians still argue how widespread coca burning was among non-elite communities, given later prohibition records, but its ritual importance is clear. You approach the basin with a small pouch of powdered lantan. The priest instructs you to sprinkle 3 pinches into the water, stirring gently with a carved wooden ladle. Each rotation aligns with the Inca's sacred numerology 3. For the 3 realms, Hanan Pacha, Kai Pacha, Uku Pacha, 2 for the duality of earth and sky, and 1 final upward swirl to connect all worlds. Callback unlocked. Remember that clockwise swirl from Section 2's irrigation channels. It echoes here in spiritual form. Joke 2. If spoons could chant, this ladle would be the choir conductor. As the water takes on a faint emerald hue from the plantain powder, the priest dips a fresh coca leaf into the basin and offers it to the assembly. You taste its minty bitterness and feel a gentle warmth bloom in your chest. Fringe practice: a few healers allegedly added crushed kile petals to the mix for extra fragrance, despite warnings from temple elders that too many scents might confuse the spirits. You probably won't survive mixing petal overload into a sacred brew, so leave the nose bombs to perfumers. With the ritual complete, the priest raises a crystal carafe filled with munya tea and passes it around. Each sip is meant to seal the blessing, calming nerves and fortifying bodies against mountain maladies. Mainstream historical fact: ethnobotanical studies confirm munya's mild analgesic and gastrointestinal benefits, validating centuries of Andean tea traditions. Historians still argue how standardized these libations were across vast Inca territories, but here, the taste feels universally soothing. You settle onto a stone bench, carved with double-headed serpent glyphs, and watch as pilgrims press their foreheads to the grotto wall, seeking a direct connection to the spring spirit. A low chant begins, a rhythmic hum that resonates through the stone dome and vibrates in your chest. You join softly, adding your voice to the collective chorus. Joke 3. If chants had subtitles, this one would read, "Everyone hums in D minor." As the hum fades, the priest gestures toward small earthenware bowls lined along the grotto's edge. Inside each is a different herb paste, mactacoa, and a bright orange sun paste made from crushed totara pollen. You dab a bit onto your wrist, feeling the paste's cooling texture settle into your skin. Fringe tidbit: some shamans believed that exchanging pastes among participants bound their fates together. If one healed, all healed. You probably won't survive sharing too many pastes, so choose your allies wisely. A final blessing involves a soft splash of spring water on your face, meant to wash away negative energies and open the senses to future visions. The cool droplets feel like feathers landing on your skin, stirring goosebumps that recall the mountain breeze from Section 1. Callback achieved: those mist-kissed moments converge here in sacred union. As the ceremony concludes, lanterns flicker on carved stone steps leading out of the grotto. Pilgrims depart in respectful silence, leaving behind coca bundles and pebble offerings. You rise, feeling buoyed by the ritual's gentle power, senses sharpened by water herbs and smoke. Outside, a condor soars across the pink dawn sky, a silent sentinel marking your passage from the sacred circle back to the everyday world. Carry with you the spring's calm embrace, the memory of chanting hearts, and the lingering whisper of Mama Cocha's blessing. You find yourself perched on a weathered stone ledge overlooking a terraced valley, where coca bushes cluster like emerald waves. The leaves, glossy and heart-shaped, seem almost to glow in the afternoon light. You probably won't survive nibbling too many fresh leaves, but a modest taste might just awaken your senses. Coca was more than a casual snack for the Inca. It served as a mild stimulant, a form of currency, and a conduit to the spirit world. Mainstream historical fact: archaeologists have found coca leaf residues in tombs dating back over 3,000 years in the Andean highlands, indicating its deep-rooted ceremonial and practical uses. Historians still argue whether coca's earliest role was ritualistic or purely functional as an energy booster for high-altitude laborers, but both uses are clearly intertwined. A fringe tidbit drifts on the breeze. Some shamanic practitioners reportedly ground coca leaves into a paste and applied it under their eyelids to induce vivid visions, an ocular trip no modern optometrist would endorse. You probably won't survive that experiment without squeaky contacts, so let's stick to simpler brews. You pluck a single fresh leaf and place it gently between your cheek and gum, feeling a slight tingling as its alkaloids release. Within moments, a subtle warmth and focus settle in your mind, easing the ache of thin mountain air in your chest. Joke one: if leaves could brag, coca would proudly declare, "I've got your back at 4,000 meters." Beyond its psychoactive qualities, coca served as a portable currency for merchants traversing the sprawling empire. Traders measured wages and tribute in bundles of leaves, sometimes 16, sometimes 20 each bundle's worth, fluctuating like modern markets. Mainstream historical fact: Spanish chroniclers recorded that Inca armies received daily rations of about 100 coca leaves, not only for sustenance but to maintain morale on grueling campaigns. Historians still argue how standardized cocoa rations were across diverse provinces given local supply variations, but its role as liquid gold in leafy form is undisputed. You climb down from the ledge toward a small way station, lined with woven straw mats and clay jars brimming with dried cocoa packets. Local messengers, their faces streaked with travel dust, pause to exchange fresh leaves for maize cakes and llama fat. Callback unlocked. Remember those maize cakes drizzled in maca broth from Section 2? This is their perfect complement: sustenance and stimulant in a single mouthful. Joke 2: if leaves could text, Coca-Cola would read, "Working overtime since the Bronze Age." At the station center, a ritual bowl of coca-infused chicha, corn beer bubbles, gently over a fire. Its sweet fermented aroma mingling with the leaf's earthy scent. You take a careful sip, allowing the warm liquid to coat your tongue. The chicha's mild alcohol blends with coca's zing, creating a gentle buzz that seems tailor-made for mountain travel. Fringe practice: some local brewers added crushed coa flowers to their coca chicha, claiming the combination unlocked prophetic dreams, a spicy prediction potion for the ambitious. You probably won't survive any side effects from wishing on flower petals, so dream responsibly. As you wander through this makeshift trading post, a group of Quechua-speaking porters chant a rhythmic song, weaving coca leaves into garlands around their necks. The garlands serve as both decoration and quick-access stimulant, tucked beneath collars for discreet chewing during long treks. Mainstream historical fact: garlanding was a common practice among Andean laborers and pilgrims, reflecting coca's integration into daily life. Historians still argue whether this fashion emerged from ritual origins or practical convenience, but the sight of leaf-wrapped necks is unmistakable. You pause at a battered ledger carved into wood, its columns listing tributes paid in coca leaf bundles, guinea pigs, and woven textiles. The Curata local governor uses quipu knots alongside carved notations to record campesino contributions. Callback unlocked those quipu references from Section 2's garden marker surface, again hinting at an empire-wide record-keeping web. Joke 3. If ledgers could sigh this, one would groan every time a bundle of leaves rolled off the top. A shaman appears, draped in llama pelts, offering you a cup of warm coca tea, steeped in spring water you encountered in Section 1's grotto. You lift the cup to your lips. The steam carries a sweet, grassy note that feels instantly calming. Mainstream historical fact: coca tea, or mate de coca, remains a popular remedy for altitude sickness. Its mild, vasoconstrictive properties easing headaches and nausea. Historians still argue how widespread its use was among commoners versus elites, but here you taste its democratizing comfort. As the tea soothes your limbs, the shaman shares folk wisdom. Chew leaves between each tooth for a balanced release, and always offer 3 leaves to the earth as thanks. The practice cements coca's role not just as a commodity but as a spiritual gift. Fringe tidbit: a few devout coca growers insisted on harvesting leaves only during full moon nights, believing lunar light enhanced the plant's potency. A pale mystery under moonlit canopies, but one you might skip testing after a few chilly nights. You rise from the mat, folding your cloth bag filled with dried coca bundles and maize cakes. The porters resume their journey eastward, and you join them, stepping into a golden late afternoon glow. The valley trails ahead, dip, and rise ribbons of dust, coloring your path like saffron-stained ribbons. Callback unlocked like that saffron glow from our Silk Road tale, but in leafy green form. As you walk, coca's mild energy keeps your pace steady, and your mind drifts through visions of ancient couriers and royal feasts. Each step links you to a tapestry of tradition leaves as currency, medicine, and magic. And though you might never know every secret tucked between those glossy veins, you carry coca's quiet power in your pocket, and perhaps a restful hint of wakeful calm as you drift towards sleep. You trudge along a narrow ridge path, where the air thins and every breath feels like a triumph. Before you, a patch of dusty red soil brims with squat tuberous plants, matka roots clinging to the earth like golden nuggets waiting to be unearthed. You probably won't survive over-harvesting these delicate tubers, so you kneel and admire the yellow flowers, nodding atop slender stems instead. Maca was prized by Inca warriors and farmers alike for its stamina-boosting properties, a true gift from the high Andes. Mainstream historical fact: Maca Lepidum mayeni has been cultivated above 4,000 meters since at least 2000 BCE, with archaeological evidence confirming its role in pre-Inca diets. Historians still argue whether Maca's rise to imperial prominence began as early as the Tiwanaku civilization, or only during the Inca expansion, but its resilience in harsh altitudes is beyond dispute. You cup a small cluster of flowers to your nose, inhaling a faint honeyed scent that belies the root's earthy bite. Fringe tidbit: some mountain ascetics claimed that chewing raw maca before sunrise granted them brief glimpses of future battles. Like a botanical crystal ball, those skeptics dismiss this as frostbitten fantasy. You probably won't survive testing prophetic root chewing on your next morning commute. So let's stick to simpler boosts. Leaning in, you use a small trowel to gently pry a few tubers from the rocky ground. Their pale carrot-like forms break the soil surface with a soft pop. You brush away granular soil, revealing knobby bodies a bit larger than your thumb. Joke 1. If roots could cheer, maca would shout, "I've got your back in every uphill sprint." You bite into a thin sliver of fresh maca, it crunches like an apple, but tastes more like a sweet parsnip dusted with earth. Immediately, a gentle warmth spreads through your limbs, easing the ache of altitude and fatigue. It's like nature's Red Bull without the crash. Mainstream historical fact: maca contains macamides and McCain's compounds, shown in modern studies to improve energy and mood. Andean peoples recognized these benefits long before laboratory tests. Historians still argue how early maca's reputation as an aphrodisiac emerged, since colonial Spaniards reported exaggerated claims. But its nutritional value remains central. As you nibble, you recall the coca tea's mild buzz from Section 4 Callback Unlocked, and imagine combining maca and coca for an unbeatable mountain tonic. You probably won't survive that combo without bouncing off the next rock face, so resist the urge to mix. Joke 2. If maca had a tagline, it'd be "Fuel your inner llama." You gather enough tubers to fill a small woven pouch, careful not to strip the patch bare. Inca harvesters rotated planting spots to preserve wild stands, a practice modern agronomists hail for sustainability. Mainstream historical fact: traditional maca cultivation involved following fields every 3 years to maintain soil fertility, an early form of crop rotation. Historians still argue whether this method was state-enforced by the Inca or evolved through centuries of local stewardship. But either way, the fields thrive under such rhythms. Next, you follow a dusty channel toward a makeshift sun-drying platform. Flat stones set at an angle bathed in intense solar rays. The sun at this altitude is fierce. You shade your eyes and lay the maca roots in a single layer. Joke 3. If roots could sunbathe, maca would demand sunglasses. A breeze tickles the drying tubers, carrying the faint trace of muña's minty aroma from the terraces below. Another callback to those royal gardens in Section 2. You watch as the roots slowly shrivel their color, deepening to burnished gold. Fringe tidbit: some local herbalists mix maca with koa flower powder during drying, claiming the floral infusion amplified maca's potency, a method never codified but whispered among valley healers. You probably won't survive flower-dusted energy bars before bedtime, so save that experiment for daylight. While you wait, you recall stories of Inca warriors marching for days with nothing but dried maca and coca to sustain them. Mainstream historical fact: Spanish chronicles note that Inca armies carried dehydrated maca on long campaigns, praising its ability to stave off hunger and fatigue. Historians still argue how much maca contributed versus other staples like quinoa or chuño, freeze-dried potatoes, but its high protein and carbohydrate content makes it a formidable ration. Your roots now crackle underfoot as you lightly press one bone dry and ready for storage. You tuck your pouch inside your cloak, the rough weave cushioning your hull. A distant condor call echoes across the valley as if approving your harvest. As you pack up, you notice a small shrine of stacked stones nearby, draped with colorful yarn, and crowned by a single maca tuber, offering an acknowledgement of mountain spirits that guard these heights. You place one of your extras beside the shrine, letting the wind carry your tanks. Fringe practice: some villagers still leave tiny matza carbines at mountain passes for safe travel, blending gratitude with the petition. You probably won't survive missing that close call on the trail without leaving a token, so you do well to respect tradition. Standing, you wipe your hands on your trousers and turn toward the next valley ridge, pouch in hand. Between coca's lift and maca's steady warmth, Your body hums with sustainable energy. Let each root story trail behind you like a golden ribbon, a reminder that in these high places the simplest plants hold the greatest power. You follow a zigzagging path down from the sun-drenched maca slopes into a sheltered nook where muña plants carpet the earth like a soft mint-green blanket. Their serrated leaves glint in the dappled sunlight, releasing a cool, refreshing scent each time a breeze stirs the patch. You probably won't survive resisting at least 1 cup of muña tea, but it's worth the gentle jolt. Muña, also called Andean peppermint, served as a staple remedy for altitude sickness, stomach cramps, and general malaise. Mainstream historical fact: colonial era, Spanish physicians documented muña's use among indigenous Andean peoples, noting its antispasmodic and digestive benefits in early medical texts. Historians still argue whether these records undervalued native knowledge or faithfully preserved herbal lore, but muña's soothing reputation endures. A fringe tidbit drifts through the leaves. Some traditional healers claimed that tying a muña sprig around your head warded off mountain headaches, much like a fragrant crown. An aromatic remedy no modern headache band would duplicate. You probably won't survive the double fragrance if you wear one too long, so maybe stick to sipping. You kneel amid the patch and gently pinch several sprigs the leaves, yielding easily between your fingers. A burst of minty coolness fills your nostrils. Joke 1: if leaves could high-five, muña would give you a cool palm slap. Gathering a handful, you move to a flat stone beside a trickling spring. The water gurgles with a soft musical tone. Callback unlocked from Section 1's Pagina pool, and you crush the muña sprigs using a smooth pebble, releasing fragrant oils that tint the water pale green. Mainstream historical fact: cold muña infusions were common for soothing inflammation, while hot brews eased respiratory issues. Andean healers mastered these temperature distinctions long before modern apothecaries. Historians still argue how standardized preparation methods were across regions given variations in local tradition, but the principle of hot for heat, cold for chill seems universal. Joke 2: if springs could giggle, this one would bubble with laughter at your clumsy crushing technique. As the steam rises from a small clay bowl filled with boiling muña water, you inhale the vapor's crisp sweetness that tickles your lungs with every breath. You take a slow sip. Its warmth spreads like a gentle wave, easing tension behind your eyes and calming any lingering cough tickles. Fringe practice. Some shamans added a pinch of crushed kilei flower petals to the tea for added floral depth, though elders warned that too much could overstimulate the senses and lead to overly vivid dreams. You probably won't survive flower-induced hallucinations before bedtime, so tread lightly. You cradle the bowl, feeling its warmth seep into your palms. Mainstream historical fact: modern phytochemical analyses confirm that muña contains pulegone and menthol compounds that relax, smooth muscle, validating centuries of traditional use. Historians still argue whether these chemical properties were recognized empirically or casually noted in passing, but here in your chest, the effect is undeniably calming. You follow the spring's channel to a shallow, hot pool, warmed by geothermal vents, a natural muña spa. As you submerge your feet among floating leaves, the minty warmth seeps into your skin, soothing swollen ankles from yesterday's climb. Joke 3: if feet could text you, they'd send a thanks for the spa day gif. Nearby, a local healer is rendering muña-infused oil by gently heating leaves in clay pots of olive-colored fat. He will use the oil to massage joints and soothe bruises. You dip a finger into the warm oil, feeling its slick coolness spread across your skin. Fringe, tidbit, some apothecaries blended munya oil with church pepper extract to create a warming rub for frozen limbs. A combination that tested the limits of human comfort. You probably won't survive that level of heat without hopping like a startled llama, so admire from afar. The healer hands you a small leather-bound booklet inscribed with leaf diagrams and preparation notes, a herbarium of sorts. You trace a finger along the munya entry noticing scribbled symbols indicating ideal harvest seasons tied to lunar phases. Callback unlocked those moonlit harvest rituals. From Section 3's spring rites echo here in herbal timing. As you sip one last cup of munya tea, the cool mountain breeze wraps around you like a soft blanket. You lean back on the warm stone, inhaling the blend of mint and mineral-rich air. The leaves' gentle hum seems to whisper, "Rest now, traveler." And with that fragrant promise carried to your chest, you rise, feeling lighter, calmer, and ready for the next herb discovery just beyond the bend. You trudge into a pine-scented clearing where low stone benches circle. A bubbling clay vat, steam, rising in lacy swirls that mingle with the mountain mist. The air carries a faint aroma of fermented corn and wild herbs, promising relief for those suffering fevers and chills. You probably won't survive diving headfirst into a vat of beer, but sampling a warm mug of Wilca chicha might just ward off the shivers. Wilca chicha, an Inca brew infused with sacred herbs, served as both tonic and medicine, prescribed by healers to ease fevers and strengthen the body's defenses. Mainstream historical fact: Spanish chroniclers observed that Andean brews often included adjuncts like herbs, flowers, and tree resins, tailored to treat specific ailments. Chicha for fevers was a well-documented remedy. Historians still argue whether the medicinal additives were primary drivers of efficacy or merely ceremonial flourishes. But the therapeutic role of chicha in Inca medicine is clear. A fringe tidbit drifts on the warm steam some healers swore that adding a pinch of dried kelu flower pollen, a potent hallucinogenic, helped burn out wicked spirits causing illness. Though evidence for this practice appears only in whispered oral accounts, you probably won't survive a mind-bending high before bedtime. So let's toast without the extras. You kneel beside a wooden table piled with multicolored maize varieties, white, purple, and golden 6-row kernels, plucked from highland fields. An elder brewer, her weathered hands streaked with yellow dye from maize husks, gestures for you to pour a ladle of tepid spring water into the vat. Callback unlocked that same pagina. A spring from Section 1 now lends its clarifying flow to your brew. Joke 1: if vats could gossip, they'd say, "Why yes, I'm a little steamy today." Next, she scatters a handful of toasted barley grains and crushed maca flour into the mix, an addition you recognize from Section 5's Hardy Warrior Rations. The brewer stirs clockwise 3 times and counterclockwise 2, echoing the spice waltz of sacred rituals. Mainstream historical fact: the incorporation of barley, a post-Columbian introduction into chicha, accelerated fermentation and bubbled the brew's potency. Andeans adapted new grains, swiftly blending tradition with innovation. Historians still argue how soon barley became commonplace in highland brews versus coastal societies. But here you taste that hybrid spirit. The vat bubbles more vigorously as the brewer adds munya sprigs harvested from Section 6's minty groves. You inhale the scent peppermint coolness swirling atop warm corn mash. Fringe practice: some valley healers preferred to soak munya in cold spring water overnight, then drizzle that infusion into chicha. At dawn, believing it amplified antiviral properties in the early light. You probably won't survive testing dawn-infused prophylactics on a full stomach, so savor this simpler blend. Joke 2. If beer could wear cologne, it'd bathe in muña every morning. As the chicha steams, the brewer lowers a dipper and offers you a small clay cup. You lift it to your lips, sipping slowly. The liquid coats your throat in honeyed warmth, the mint lending a gentle tingle. Mainstream historical fact: modern analyses of chicha samples from archaeological sites show natural fermentation yields low alcohol content around 2 to 3%, sufficient to induce slight euphoria without severe inebriation, ideal for fever patients. Historians still argue whether these levels were intentional for medicinal dosing or incidental to fermentation methods, but here the effect is comforting rather than intoxicating. You lean back against a sun-warmed boulder, letting the brew's gentle haze cradle you. Fringe healer lore says that couples should share a single cup of Wilca chicha before marriage, symbolically sharing heat to ward off future illnesses. You probably won't survive mixing marriage customs with medicine, so keep ceremonies and cures separate. A crackling fire beside the vat glows beneath a metal grate where bundles of willow bark, smolder will, or bark of the sacred willow tree imparts antiseptic and anti-inflammatory compounds to the brew. You scoop a bit of soft foam from the cup and feel it foam on your tongue, reminding you of lightly whipped cream. Joke 3. If foam could text, it'd send you a flirty emoji. Nearby, villagers recline on woven mats, cups in hand, murmuring thanks between sips. A child with copper-toned braids offers you a woven coaster callback. Unlock the same braided patterns you admired on coca pouches in Section 4. Now cradle your cup. You smile, appreciating how these motifs weave through daily life and healing rituals alike. The elder brewer retrieves a small clay vial filled with bright red achiote seeds crushed into oil. She drips a few drops into the chicha, watching the brew blush like dawn's first light. Mainstream historical fact: annatto achiote was used to color foods and drinks and believed to strengthen immunity. Its antioxidant properties prompted colonial physicians to recommend its use in convalescent diets. Historians still argue whether achiote's adoption in chicha was health-driven or aesthetic preference, but its coral hue lifts your spirits. You cradle the cup, watching steam spiral into the open sky where condors wheel lazily. With each sip, warmth floods your limbs, easing muscle aches and calming fevered thoughts. The village healer circles among the seated elders, murmuring prayers and offering extra cups to those whose cheeks glow too bright. Fringe tidbit: some elders claimed that if the brew cooled too much before drinking, it lost its healing spark and must be reborn in fresh steam. You probably won't survive reheating your beer every time you forget it's there, so drink mindfully. As you finish the last drop, you feel a soothing drowsiness beckon, a gentle lull, woven from maize, muña wilca, and mountain spring. Mainstream historical fact: low-alcohol medicinal beverages have been staples in many cultures, serving dual roles as nutrition and mild sedation for the sick. Historians still argue whether chicha's sedative reputation stemmed from alcohol herbal adjuncts or mere placebo, but here you drift into a relaxed hush. Rising, you press a hand to your warmed belly and stand the brew's afterglow guiding your steps. The villagers nod in silent blessing as you walk past the clearing, the clay bat's final whispers fading behind you. You carry chicha's soft ember of comfort into the cool evening, its memory warming you like a secret heart. You step into a makeshift infirmary, carved from natural rock alcoves, where shafts of golden sun filter through narrow roof slits, illuminating benches lined with earthenware bowls. and bundles of fresh herbs. The air smells of antiseptic soap and warm dust. You probably won't survive poking around without catching sight of half-healed wounds. But today, you're here to learn the gentle art of lantain wound healing. Lantain, known today as plantain, was the Inca's go-to remedy for cut abrasions and insect bites, prized for its soothing mucilage and antibacterial properties. Mainstream historical fact ethnobotanical surveys confirm that Plantago major and P. lanceolata, indigenous to the Andes, were widely used by Andean healers for their anti-inflammatory and wound healing effects. Historians still argue whether plantain's medicinal use predated Inca imperial standardization or emerged through Quechua folk practices. But its efficacy left little room for debate. A fringe tidbit drifts in on the warm breeze. Some healers claimed that applying lantain at midnight under a new moon accelerated healing by harnessing lunar growth energies, a practice frowned upon by temple elders, but whispered among fringe practitioners. You probably won't survive testing moon face bandages on your next paper cut. So let's stick to daylight. You kneel beside a low stone basin filled with cool spring water. Callback unlocked from Section 1's pagina, where fresh lantain leaves float like green rafts. Plucking a handful, you crush them in your palms, releasing a glistening viscous gel that coats your fingers. Joke 1: if leaves could high-five, lantain would give you the ultimate slimy handshake. A healer draped in llama wool robes approaches, nodding approval at your technique. She mixes the plantain gel with finely ground kilei flower petals, a callback to Section 9's topical salves, and a pinch of volcanic ash believed to absorb impurities. Mainstream historical fact: volcanic ash, rich in silicates and minerals, was occasionally incorporated into wound poultices across the Andes to provide gentle abrasiveness and drying properties. Historians still argue how common ash was as an additive versus pure plantain poultices, but here you see the hybrid formula in action. You dab the mixture onto a shallow gash carved into a practice stump of wood, an apprentice's stand-in for human skin. The gel glides smoothly, its cool moisture soothing the simulated abrasion. Within minutes, the poultice congeals into a protective band, its pale green hue flecked with pink petals. Fringe practice, some mountain healers added crushed church pepperberries to the paste for mild numbing, though elders warned that overheating the mixture could blister delicate tissue. You probably won't survive burning your kitchen stove with pepper paste, so admire the cautionary tale. Joke 2: if wounds could text, they'd DM thanks for the spa treatment. Nearby, a wooden rack holds pre-made lantain salve sticks, cylinders wrapped in banana leaf and tied with quipus for dosage. The healer explains that each quipu knot denotes a 2-finger breadth of salve application, a tactile recipe no ink could fully capture. Mainstream historical fact: quipus served multifaceted roles in record-keeping, from census data to ritual schedules, and evidence suggests medicinal dosages may have been among their many uses. Historians still argue how precisely quipus conveyed complex instructions like herb-to-bandage ratios, but here, you feel the coded guidance in each knot. You peel back the banana leaf on one stick and shave a sliver, rubbing it between your fingertips. The salve's texture is buttery, its scent earthy with a hint of mint, from residual muña, a callback to Section 6's teas, and a subtle tang from ash. Applying it to your forearm, you feel instant relief from a lingering itch you didn't even notice before. The healer gestures toward a wooden table where several cloth-bound wound models await inspection. Pilgrims bring small cuts from thorny cactus or barbed grasses along the trails. You lean next to a local farmer watching as the healer cleans his scraped calf with spring water and then applies the lantan paste. The man winces briefly, then relaxes as the soothing properties kick in. Mainstream historical fact: clinical studies have shown plantain extracts promote fibroblast activity and accelerate epithelialization, scientifically validating ancient applications. Historians still argue whether the Incas recognized microscopic mechanisms or simply trusted empirical outcomes. But here the result speaks volumes. You recall the primal drip of spring water in the grotto. Callback from Section 3, now seeing it as the first step in a healing cascade. Water cleanses herbs, soothe ash, protects. Joke 3, if spring water could whistle, it'd sing. Clean, start my friend. Suddenly, a young apprentice scurries forward, carrying a bundle of maca flower poultice, leftover from Section 5's energy bars coated in lantern gel. The healer explains that combining maca's protein-rich flour with plantain enhances tissue regeneration, a synergy of nutrition and topical care. Fringe tidbit: a few valley clinics experimented with adding crushed coca leaf to these hybrid poultices, believing they boosted circulation around wounds, a practice largely abandoned for its stimulating side effects. You probably won't survive jittery healing sessions, so proceed with caution. A hush falls as the healer sprinkles a few drops of munya-infused spring water onto the applied bandages. A ritual blessing meant to seal the potion's potency. Mainstream historical fact: many Andean remedies incorporated multiple herbs to create complementary effects, reflecting a holistic understanding of healing. Historians still argue how codified these multi-herb formulas were versus ad hoc mixtures devised by individual healers, but witnessing the structure symmetry here suggests a refined tradition. You rise, feeling the gentle tingle where the soothe coats your forearm. Standing, you admire the orderly rows of repaired wounds on practice models, each telling a story of mountain trek's harvest duties and the quiet care of healers. The sun shifts, sending slanted rays through the alcove and illuminating a carved glyph of a healing hand on the wall, a silent testament to Lantain's role in Andean medicine. Before you depart, the healer presses a small palm leaf booklet into your hand, a handwritten guide listing Lantain's various preparations from poultices to infused oils. Callback unlocked this complements Section 6's Munya oil protocols and Section 9's Kile salves, weaving a tapestry of topical traditions. You step out of the infirmary into the cool corridor, your forearm still cool and calm. The scent of plantain and ash lingers in the air, blending with the distant hum of festival drums. Carry the memory of Lantain's soothing embrace with you, an artisanal balm for wounds of body and spirit alike. You descend a mossy stair, hewn into bedrock, the damp air growing cooler as you approach a faintly lit alcove, where clusters of delicate flowers bloom along tidal patterns of mist. Their petals glisten with tiny droplets, casting kaleidoscopic hues of pink and white across the stone floor. You probably won't survive slipping on the wet flagstones, so tread carefully as you draw near the Kile flower beds. Kile, sometimes called the Andean lily, served as a cornerstone for topical salves and poultices, prized for its soothing sap and aromatic oils. Mainstream historical fact botanical studies show Kile petals contain anti-inflammatory and antiseptic compounds historically used by Andean healers to treat skin irritations and rashes. Historians still argue whether the plant's curative properties were independently discovered across separate valleys or disseminated through Inca imperial networks, but the consistency of its use speaks volumes. A fringe tidbit: drifts on the steam from nearby hot springs. Some fringe practitioners claimed that Kile essence, when combined with moonlit glacier water, produced a luminescent ointment that glowed faintly on wounded skin, an unverified beauty ritual that likely began as a bedtime ghost story for apprentices. You probably won't survive testing glow-in-the-dark salves on your next night's hike. So let's admire the lore from a safe distance. Kneeling beside a low stone planter filled with pink lacquered blooms, you gently pinch a petal between your fingers. Its edges curl slightly at the touch, releasing a soft, honeyed fragrance. You crush it into a paste, with a smooth pebble callback unlocked to the mortar and pestle rhythm from Section 8's Lanterne Preparations, and the smear feels silky on your skin. Joke 1. If petals could giggle, Kile would chuckle every time you bruise your knee. Next, a healer. Ladles warm. Spring water. Recall the pagina flow from Section 3 into a clay bowl, then stirs in your crushed petals, along with a spoonful of volcanic ash for texture and mild, desiccant action. Mainstream historical fact. Andean poultice recipes often combine plant extracts with mineral additives such as clay or ash to balance moisture and create protective barriers over wounds. Historians still argue whether these minerals were selected for symbolic reasons or purely functional ones. But the dual benefit of absorbency and antisepsis is clear. You dip a strip of woven cotton previously soaked in munya tea from Section 6 into the fragrant mixture. As you apply it to a small practice scrape on your forearm, the cool paste soothes instantly its gentle moisture, sealing the microabrasion. Fringe practice. Some healers recommended adding a drop of kelu flower oil to the poultice to boost circulation around the injury, though temple records caution that overuse could lead to mild tingling sensations, mistaken for allergic reactions. You probably won't survive confusing the therapeutic buzz with a rash, so measure sparingly. Joke 2. If your arm could text you, it'd send ouch nah more like ah. You wrap the cotton with a band of soft llama wool knot to Section 8's poultice wraps and secure it with a braided grass tie. Within minutes, the paste darkens as it draws out impurities, the ash working like tiny magnets for toxins. Mainstream historical fact. Modern dermatological research confirms that poultices can support wound drainage and reduce infection risk when changed regularly. Andean healers intuitively practiced these principles centuries ago. Historians still argue how often bandage changes occurred in remote hamlets versus imperial clinics. But here, you sense the careful attention woven into each dressing. A gentle hum arises as local pilgrims gather beside the healing alcove, murmuring prayers and offering small stones to honor the mountain spirit. Callback unlocked the concentric pebble rituals from Section 1's Pagina. Spring now echo here in communal thanksgiving. Joke 3. If bandages could sing, they'd belt out show tunes about road rash recovery. Beside you, an apprentice carefully bottles leftover Kile-infused oil, clear and golden, labeling it with a quipu knot system to denote potency and harvest date. Mainstream historical fact quipus served not only for census data, but also for tracking herbal preparations, indicating a sophisticated record-keeping tradition. Historians still argue the full extent of quipu use beyond numeric data, given the scarcity of surviving examples, but here the labeled oil speaks to a rich archival practice. You notice scarred stones lining the alcove walls, each carved with glyphs depicting open hands and flowing petals. These are healing glyphs said to enhance the plant's efficacy by channeling spiritual energy. Fringe tidbit. A few shamans insisted that carving fresh glyphs with Kile sap improved the glyph's potency, merging art and medicine in a single ritual. You probably won't survive carving in sacred spaces untrained, so let the artist keep it sacred. A healer approaches with a small wooden spoon and invites you to taste the remaining oil, an odd but traditional test of purity. The flavor is lightly floral, with a hint of minerality lingering on your tongue like a delicate perfume. Mainstream historical fact: ingesting small amounts of topicals was common in Andean medicine to check for contaminants and ensure edibility. Safety protocols blended seamlessly with empirical testing. Historians still argue how widespread ingestion tests were, but here the delicate taste reassures you of its gentle purity. As you stand, the bandage on your forearm warms slightly callback. Master the initial chill gives way to a comforting heat. A final nod to the Munya and Lantain synergy you explored earlier. You allow the wrap to remain, trusting the Kilei's gentle magic to continue its work. Before departing, you place a handful of petals into the alcove's spring-fed trough, an offering to ensure future blooms and continued healing power. The petals float like pink boats on glassy water, drifting toward an unseen current. You step back, breathing deeply as the floral scent lingers in the cool air. Carry with you the memory of Kilei's soothing touch, the echo of communal glyph chants, and the harmonious dance of petals and water. Each petal crushed and applied weaves a living tapestry of Inca healing artistry, one gentle bloom at a time. You slip into a shadow-dappled chamber where the air shimmers with steam and incense, and shelves of leather-bound scrolls line rough-hewn walls. In the center, a low stone table holds bowls of powdered herbs, coca leaves, and spiral quipus marking recipe steps. You probably won't survive mixing shamanic brews without memorizing cryptic quipu codes. But let's peek at these vision-inducing formulas. Shamans crafted special brews called ayahuasca to facilitate spiritual journeys, blending cocamuña kile and spring water in precise ratios. Mainstream historical fact: colonial-era accounts describe ayahuasca as a mild, psychoactive concoction used in divination and healing rituals, though exact recipes were jealously guarded by temple specialists. Historians still argue whether ayahuasca contained additional psychoactive roots, like datura, or was purely coca-based. But its ritual role is undisputed. A fringe tidbit drifts on sandalwood smoke. Some secret texts hint at a rare moon tincture, made by soaking coca in glacier melt water under full moonlight. For 3 nights, a brew said to unlock ancestral visions, but risked waking restless spirits. You probably won't survive any spontaneous ancestral debates, so let's focus on the daylight recipe. You kneel and unfurl a scroll, reading quipu knots that denote 3 leaves, 5 pinches, and 2 ladles of muña infusion. Callback unlocked those muña sprays from Section 6. Now converge here as energizing catalysts. Carefully, you pluck 3 coca leaves, grind them to a coarse paste, and stir them into a bowl of chilled spring water from Section 1's Pagina pool. Joke 1: if bowls could judge, this one would scold mine the lumps, traveler. Next, you add 5 generous pinches of crushed kilei petals, their honeyed aroma mingling with minty tang. You stir exactly 2 circles clockwise, then 1 counterclockwise, echoing the spice waltz of earlier chapters. Mainstream historical fact: directional stirring and specific numbers in Andean rituals reinforce cosmic harmony between the earth, sky, and underworld. Historians still argue how literal practitioners were about these numerological rules versus ceremonial symbolism, but here you feel their gravity. A healer lights 3 small resin cones, no incense, and wafts the smoke over the bowl, cleansing the brew of negative energies. Fringe practice. A handful of rogue shamans once experimented with adding crushed hallucinogenic toad venom to ayahuasca, an illicit twist that ended badly for apprentices. You probably won't survive that mistake. So let's keep to herbs. Joke 2. If smoke could speak, it'd mutter, "I've got your back, spiritually speaking." Finally, you strain the mixture through a cloth dipped in avocado leaf oil. Callback oil infusions from Section 8 yielding a clear, pale green elixir. You sip it slowly. A subtle warmth unfurls in your mind, bridging ordinary consciousness with a gentle edge of otherworldly clarity. Mainstream historical fact: ethnobotanists find that coca-based liquids have faster absorption than leaf chewing, offering quicker onset for ritual purposes. Historians still argue how widespread liquid preparations were compared to traditional masticated leaves, but this elixir feels undeniably potent. You settle onto a woven mat as low chanting begins, inviting visions and healing insights. Fringe tidbit: some traditions insisted that shamans must fast for 3 days before consuming ayahuasca to heighten its effects, an austere preparation that few apprentices survived without fainting. You probably won't survive that level of commitment, so savor this modest glimpse. As the brew's warmth radiates through you, your senses sharpen, colors seem richer, sounds more resonant, and the stone chamber hums with ancestral echoes. The shaman's eyes glow with gentle authority as you drift toward a meditative haze. Remember this feeling: the weaving of coca herbs, water, and ritual into a single cup that bridges worlds. You slip into a clearing where adobe walls, half collapsed and overgrown with ivy, stand as silent witnesses to a turbulent time when Spanish conquistadors stormed these valleys. You probably won't survive drawing the Inca's ire, yet here you are exploring how colonial edicts tried to wipe out native herbs. When the Spanish arrived in the 1530s, they imposed bans on traditional healing herbs like coca muña and quilay, labeling them heathen medicines. Mainstream historical fact: colonial records show that the Crown's Royal Tribunal prohibited indigenous healers from practicing without licensure, effectively criminalizing centuries of herbal lore. Historians still argue whether these laws aimed more at spiritual conquest or economic control of lucrative leaf trades, but their chilling effect was immediate. A fringe tidbit lingers among cracked bricks. Rumor has it that some defiant Gurkhas hid coca leaves in hollowed llama bones to smuggle them past Spanish checkpoints, a covert courier system no modern TSA would overlook. You probably won't survive trying that trick on airport security, so tuck it away. For rebel legends only, you step over a tangle of wild muña sprigs reclaiming the courtyard. The scent is defiant minty promise amid stone ruins. Callback: unlock this same mint east fevers in Section 7's chicha baths. Yet here, it grows free of corseted jars. Joke 1: if muña could chant, it'd sing, "I'm back and I'm minty." Inside the skeletal structure, you find faded graffiti, etched by colonial-era healers, glyphs of plant motifs, crossed out by Christian crosses. Their hands trembled as they marked these symbols, blending fear and faith. Mainstream historical fact mission records note that friars destroyed herbal manuscripts en masse, aiming to replace native pharmacopoeia with European remedies like quinine. Historians still argue how thorough these destructions were, since some manuscripts resurfaced hidden in mountain caves. But the cultural loss was severe. You find a stack of tattered parchments, clandestine notes on quilay salves, written in Quechua but hidden in Spanish-language devotional texts. Fringe practice healers wrote recipes in invisible ink made from lantern juice to evade confiscation, an ancient spycraft that predated modern stealth ink. You probably won't survive reading invisible instructions. So rest easy, knowing secrets remain hidden. Joke 2. If parchments could wing these, would say, "Gotcha, conquistadors." Beyond the inner courtyard, you spot a hidden alcove where a handful of elderly curanderos gather under the moonlight to tend small muña and maca seedlings, ensuring continuity despite bans. Mainstream historical fact oral histories recorded by early missionaries mention clandestine midnight gardens where healers passed on cutting and grafting techniques under ritual fire. Historians still argue how widespread these secret nurseries were versus isolated pockets of resistance. But their legacy lives on in modern ethnobotanical studies. You crouch to examine tidy rows of young coca shoots, pushing through rocky soil determined to survive. Callback unlocked the same leaves that fueled imperial runners in Section 4. Now sprout under cover of darkness. Joke 3. If seedlings could protest, they'd wave tiny banners of green. A hush falls as the curanderos light small torches fed with koa incense, its sweet smoke swirling around the seedlings as a protective blessing. They chant a lullaby in Quechua, invoking Pachamama's favor, their voices rising in a defiant hymn against foreign rule. Mainstream historical fact archival letters describe indigenous petitions to Spanish authorities, pleading for licensure to cultivate coca for the common good, blending legal rhetoric with spiritual claims. Historians still argue whether any petitions succeeded or were merely symbolic, but this blend of diplomacy and faith underscores healers' resilience. You leave the alcove quietly, heart warmed by their perseverance. Outside, the valley's breeze carries the faint aroma of muña and ash, a reminder that despite bans, the plants endure. You carry with you the knowledge that colonial disruptions could not fully erase the Inca's healing heritage. It lives on in hidden gardens, whispered recipes, and the very air that scents these ruins. You slip through a narrow cleft in sheer cliff walls, entering a hidden valley where sunlight filters through dense eucalyptus groves, and the air hums with cicada song. The path narrows until you step onto a moss-carpeted clearing, where rudimentary stone huts crouch beneath overhanging ledges. This is a refuge country. Here, remote communities preserved Inca herbal lore, long after colonial bands swept across the highlands. You probably won't survive wandering unannounced into these guarded enclaves, so tread lightly and whisper your intentions. The valley's isolation, accessible only by a winding goat trail, protected its people from outside interference. Mainstream historical fact anthropologists have documented Andean hidden valleys, where indigenous groups maintain pre-Columbian practices well into the 19th century. Largely due to geographic inaccessibility, historians still argue whether these pockets formed spontaneously or were intentionally designated by Inca authorities as safe havens, but their cultural continuity speaks for itself. A fringe tidbit arrives on a breeze, scented with wild muña, and eucalyptus villagers claim that at dawn, the valley's mist condenses into tiny herb-infused droplets on thatched roofs, which they harvest as spirit dew, a potent tonic believed to carry mountain energy. You probably won't survive tasting roof runoff back home, so savor it here under the open sky. You follow a narrow stream to a communal hearth, where elders gather around a low fire, meticulously sorting dried coca leaves, lantan stalks, and kile petals into woven baskets. Each basket bears a woven tag indicating the plant's lineage. Some herbs trace back to specific Inca palace gardens. Callback unlocked imperial garden threads from Section 2. Now weave through this pastoral tapestry. Joke 1: if baskets could talk, they'd brag about their prestigious ancestry. An elder shaman, a woman whose silver braids drape like waterfalls, beckons you forward. She produces a small wooden staff carved with quipu knots detailing medicinal recipes. Today's lesson: a restorative fomentation, combining muña maca and a pinch of volcanic ash warmed over heated stones. Mainstream historical fact: ethnographers note that fomentation applying hot herb compresses was a cornerstone of Andean therapy, easing muscle pain and chills. Historians still argue how standardized these formulations were given each valley's microclimate and available flora, but the practice thrives here unchanged. You kneel by a fire-heated slab, where the shaman pours spring water from a gourd onto hot rocks. A callback to Section 3's pagina rites producing fragrant steam. Into this mist, she sprinkles crushed muña and maca flour, forming a thick paste. You watch as steam curls upward, carrying the herb's essence. Fringe practice. Some healers added kelei pollen to fomentations for its aromatic and mild analgesic qualities, though too much made the steam unbearably sweet. You probably won't survive an overdose of floral fog in a small hut, so they keep the ratio precise. Joke 2: if steam could sneeze, it'd catch you unawares. The shaman gestures for you to press the warm poultice onto her forearm. Faint lines of muscle visible beneath weathered skin. She winces slightly, then closes her eyes as the warmth seeps in. You mimic her pressing a paste of your own onto your calves. Feeling tension melt away. Mainstream historical fact: topical heat combined with herbal extracts increases blood flow, promoting healing, a principle recognized in both ancient Andean and modern physiotherapy. Historians still argue how such empirical insights were recorded, scrolls, quipus, or oral chants, but here application precedes documentation. Nearby, children weave new baskets for harvested herbs, singing softly in Quechua dialects that predate Spanish influence. Their lullabies reference mountain spirits and water deities, blending daily work with ancestral songs. Callback unlocked ritual chants from Section 3's grotto, now echo in youthful voices. You rise and follow a narrow plank bridge across a rushing stream to another hut where mason jars line shelves, modern vessels repurposed to store dried herbs. A young herbalist offers you a flask of moonlit muña elixir, distilled from leaves gathered at midnight under a full moon. He explains that this elixir soothes insomnia one sip, before slumber calms racing thoughts. Mainstream historical fact: some Andean herbalists indeed harvested herbs in alignment with lunar cycles, believing plant potency waxed with moonlight. Historians still argue whether lunar harvesting had measurable effects or served symbolic meaning, but in your mouth, the mint-infused warmth feels serenely soporific. Joke 3: if elixirs could yawn, this one would doze off mid-pour. In the communal square, a group of women grinds dried herbs on a stone metate, preparing powdered blends for trade. They'll barter these powders with valley neighbors, rare commodities, for remote healers unable to cultivate every species. You recall the traveling traders from Section 4 and Section 8's clandestine smuggling. Here, barter replaces banishment. At dusk, lanterns flicker as the community gathers for dinner maize porridge, laced with maca tea made from muña and plantain, and small corn beer cups to aid digestion. You join at a low table, each bite and sip connecting you to centuries of valley guardianship. The air cools and mist rises as mountain spirits stir. You leave the clearing beneath a canopy of stars, each twinkle. A reminder that this refuge is both ancient and timeless. Carry with you the quiet strength of hidden valleys, where herbal wisdom survived by blending tradition song and the land's fierce embrace. You crest a grassy knoll tinged gold by the rising sun and spot a cluster of curious shapes on the horizon: canvas tents and wooden crates marking a 19th century scientific expedition camp. You probably won't survive poking through antique journals without scholar-tinged cricks in your neck. But today, you witness the rediscovery of forgotten Inca herbal wisdom by European explorers. These intrepid naturalists, driven by Enlightenment zeal and colonial curiosity, traversed mountain passes to catalog Andean plants once revered by Inca healers. Mainstream historical fact: in the mid-1800s, British botanist Richard Spruce and French explorer Alcide d'Orbigny published some of the first Western treatises on maca coca and quillet, introducing them to European botanical gardens. Historians still argue whether their work honored indigenous knowledge or appropriated it for scientific prestige. But their collections preserved species nearly lost to post-conquest upheaval. A fringe tidbit flickers from a faded field notebook. Spruce allegedly carried a pocket-sized quipu as a novelty, inscribing his plant counts in knotted cord alongside Latin classifications, a whimsical memento combining Inca record-keeping with Western taxonomy. You probably won't survive untangling his knots for scientific data, so admire the cross-cultural curiosity instead. You stroll past a neatly labeled herbarium tent where dried specimens of coca leaves are pressed between parchment sheets. A crisp card reads Erythroxylum novogranatens, and you recall the living leaves you tasted back in Section 4 Callback Unlocked. Inside, captains of industry and government officials pore over wall-mounted Latin descriptions oblivious to the sacred springs and secret gardens that once nurtured these plants. Joke 1: if specimens could gossip, they'd sigh, "Yes, I was worth more than gold once." Outside, a local guide leads a French scientist by the hand to high-altitude wetlands, where chuño potatoes and wild muña flourish. He watches in wonder as the scientist tiptoes through marshy ground, exclaiming in accented Quechua, learned only days ago, "A estas hierbas son magníficas." Mainstream historical fact explorers often relied on indigenous guides, queros and curacas, whose knowledge was essential to locating and identifying medicinal flora. Historians still argue how much credit local experts received versus European discoverers, but here the collaboration shines through. You join the guide and scientist beside a steaming bog, watching as they scoop muña leaves and taste a snippet of raw root. A callback to Section 6's tea and Section 5's maca boosts. The guide explains traditional preparation methods, his words softly echoing across the wetland. Fringe practice. Some field diaries note that explorers use muña leaves to mask the taste of quinine in anti-malarial doses, blending local remedies with imported medicine. You probably won't survive that particular medical mashup, so sip your clear water instead. Joke 2: if bogs could banter, they'd quip, "Swamp today, gone tomorrow." Back at camp, you peer through binoculars at a heated discussion between a Spanish-trained doctor and a visiting ethnographer. They debate whether Lantin's mucilage merits patent protection in European pharmacies. Historians still argue whether early patents respected communal knowledge or exploited it commercially, but the clash reveals colonial tensions over intellectual property. Nearby, a patient reclines on a canvas cot receiving a chile poultice applied by an astonished army surgeon. He notes in his log that the poultice soothed battlefield wounds faster than European salves, a rare nod to native efficacy. Callback unlocked to Section 9 salve, now vindicated by foreign hands. You stroll to a makeshift laboratory tent, draped in musk-scented oilcloth, where extracts of total pollen and wool bark are boiled in copper stills. The alchemical hiss reminds you of Section 7's fever-soothing chicha steam. Mainstream historical fact: early phytochemical studies in this era isolated alkaloids from coca and simple glycosides from plantain, laying the groundwork for modern pharmaceuticals. Historians still argue whether these tests captured the plant's holistic power or reduced them to chemical components. But you see, both perspectives meet in bubbling glassware. Joke 3. If beakers could blush, they'd turn the shade of kilei petals. As midday heat ripples across the camp, you sit with a tattered leather portfolio of etched copper plates depicting herb leaf anatomy. The engravings painstakingly detailed reveal leaf veins, root cross-sections, and petal arrangements. A keen-eyed botanist points out a subtle ribbing on a coca vein, a callback to Section 4's leaf inspection ritual, and you marvel at how scientific scrutiny echoes ancient reverence. An assistant passes you a thick volume of bound pages, Flora Andina, the expedition's published compendium. You run your finger along the Latin name for Macalepidium mayeni, and then read its Quechua synonym, scrawled beneath in ink. Mainstream historical fact: many 19th century botanical works included local plant names alongside scientific classifications, reflecting early attempts at cultural translation. Historians still argue whether bilingual entries empowered indigenous experts or merely exoticized their knowledge. But you appreciate the dual heritage. The day wanes, and you join the camp's evening lecture. Explorers and native healers share observations by lantern light. They swap puns about leaf shapes. This one looks like my neighbor's hat, and burst into laughter, bridging worlds with gentle humor. Callback unlock the light-hearted jokes in these lectures resemble Section 1's winking water quip, reminding you that levity unites even the most serious quests. As fireflies gather around tent flaps like floating kelei petals, you close your eyes, breathing in the mingled scents of drying specimens, munya smoke, and roasting corn kernels. You carry the knowledge that these early modern rediscoverers help preserve a pharmacopoeia nearly lost to time, ensuring that Inca healing arts would live on in both scientific journals and living gardens alike. You follow a narrow dirt road snaking down the mountainside until it opens onto a sunlit plateau, dotted with geometric herb plots guarded by solar panels and rainwater cisterns. This is a modern permaculture farm, where eco-conscious cultivators revive ancient Inca herbal gardens beside natural springs. You probably won't survive marveling at every solar array, but take a moment to appreciate how tradition meets technology. Here, terraces once tilled by mule and mano are now maintained with minimal disturbance, using gravity-fed irrigation drawn from Pagina Springs. Mainstream historical fact: contemporary permaculture practitioners in the Andes draw on Inca engineering principles, gravity-fed canals, terracing, and companion planting to create resilient agro-ecosystems that thrive at high elevations. Historians still argue how faithfully these methods mirror original Inca designs versus modern adaptations, but the results speak for themselves. A fringe tidbit flutters through the air. Some permaculturists believe that inoculating spring water with heritage microbes from old adobe terraces accelerates soil fertility. A microbiome heirloom no lab can fully catalog. You probably won't survive spiking your tap water with valley dirt, so let's stick to appreciating from afar. You step between beds of Munya Yanten and Kilei, each labeled with QR codes, linking to multimedia guides on traditional uses. A farm guide demonstrates a solar dehydrator solar oven boxes that slowly dry maca roots in transparent chambers, preserving delicate enzymes and flavors. Callback unlocked this echoes Section 5's sun-drying platforms but with glass and seals. Joke 1, if Roots could review their lodging, they'd rate this spa 5 stars. Nearby rows of coca seedlings thrive under shade cloths, grown legally for research and community use. The guide explains how cooperatives secure government permits proof that these sacred plants can find a place in modern regulation. Mainstream historical fact: community-based coca cooperatives in Bolivia and Peru successfully negotiated legal frameworks to cultivate coca for traditional, medicinal, and scientific purposes, challenging colonial-era bans. Historians still argue how effectively these models balance cultural rights with anti-narcotics efforts. But here, the leaves unfurl under respectful care. You kneel by a raised bed of kale flowers, compressing a petal between thumb and forefinger to release its floral oil. A small wind turbine turns quietly above, powering a micro-distillery that extracts kale essence for artisanal salves. Fringe practice: a handful of eco-entrepreneurs distill essence at dawn, then bottle it at dusk to capture fluctuating aromatic profiles, an age-old pursuit of ephemeral potency, now measured in solar volts. You probably won't survive bottling your brew overnight, so savor this glimpse. Joke 2. If turbines could twerk, they'd groove to the scent of kale. On the far edge of the plateau, heritage gardeners tend a living quipu strings of dyed plant fibers, hung from a frame, each color-coded strand representing a different herb's planting date and yield. You trace your finger along a deep green cord, its knot marking the last maca harvest. Mainstream historical fact: some modern agri-enthusiasts recreate Kipu-inspired data systems to log crop performance, blending ancestral mnemonic devices with digital analytics. Historians still argue if this approach honors Quipu's complexity or oversimplifies it, but the living record pulsates with practical insight. You pause at a communal kitchen with glass walls where chefs infuse spring water with muña and lantain for a cafe. They serve muña-laced smoothies, topped with maca powder and honey from highland hives. Callback unlocked nutritional combos from sections 2, 5, and 6 converge here in a single glass. A chef swirls a spoon. Try this, our Andean. Sunrise blends ancient stamina with modern flair. You sip, tasting bright herb notes balanced by sweet root undertones. Joke 3. If smoothies could sing, this one would croon in Quechua. Beyond the cafe, a research hive shows honeybees pollinating totora reeds and koa flowers producing aromatic honey sold as mountain gold. The beekeeper explains that bees help maintain biodiversity, echoing the Inca respect for interdependence among species. Mainstream historical fact: apicultural projects in Andean permaculture gardens enhance pollination and crop yields, integrating beekeeping into sustainable farming, a modern parallel to Inca agroforestry networks. Historians still argue how much the Inca practiced beekeeping, given the absence of hives in colonial accounts. But modern bees thrive here nonetheless. You wander to a small amphitheater, overlooking the terraces where workshops on traditional medicine and agroecology draw local students. Graphic panels compare ancient herbal recipes, kile, poultice, muña té, coca chicha, to modern pharmacological studies. Callback unlocked scientific validation of ancestral lore threads through every display. A lecturer invites you to participate in soil biology tests, but you politely decline. No lab streaks in your adventurer's boots, thank you. As afternoon light wanes, you follow the channel back to a polished metal spring spout, where water flows cool and clear, a callback to Section 1's sacred spring. You cup the water and let it trickle over your wrists, feeling the same crystalline promise in a modern frame. The sun dips behind distant peaks, and LEDs, embedded along the canal, glow softly, ushering in twilight. You step onto a wooden walkway that leads to a transparent roofed observatory where you recline in a hammock beneath starlit panels. The air hums with quiet energy. Solar panels humming, water gurgling, and perfumed herbs softly exhaling their fragrance. You close your eyes, letting innovation and tradition mingle in the rhythm of your breath. Carry with you the vision of sustainable gardens living data quipus and the enduring power of Inca herbal wisdom, now reborn in a world that still values mountain springs and medicinal leaves. You emerge from the observatory onto a grassy knoll, where lanterns line a winding path back toward your mountaintop camp. The night air is cool-scented with lingering hints of muña llanten, and distant campfires an aromatic farewell to the day's discoveries. You probably won't survive wandering unlit trails without a headlamp, but trust your senses and follow the herb's whispering guide. Distant hills roll into darkness, and the stars above blaze like scattered kelly petals across the sky. Each lantern you pass glows, softly casting pools of amber light on the ground and painted glyphs marking milestones of your journey. Springs, gardens, grottos, and lab tents remembered. Call back, unlock this path, threads together every chapter's sacred space. Your footsteps tread past a simple stone bench carved with intertwined coca leaves and maca roots, a communal monument where travelers pause to reflect on healing plants' gifts. You rest here a moment, breathing in the night's cool exhale. A faint hum rises from the valley below, mountain frog cicadas, and perhaps the soft echo of distant chants. Ahead, you glimpse the silhouette of your campsite tent, flaps fluttering in a gentle breeze, lantern light flickering against the canvas. Familiar scents greet you: dried maca tubers, hung to cure, muña bundles, tied with cord, and a small bundle of kile petals, pressed between journal pages. Each aroma is a memory, both sensory and narrative, grounding you in this living tapestry. You settle onto a woven mat beside a low fire pit, its embers glowing like ancient hearts, kept warm through centuries. A metal flask of muña llanten tea warms your hands, carrying the last golden traces of daylight. Sipping slowly, you let calm seep into every fiber of your body. Joke 1: if fire pits could gossip, they'd smirk. I've still got the hottest embers in town. As the breeze rustles nearby herbs, you recall remote valleys where hidden gardens endured bands. Section 12: Colonial Camps, where explorers reconnected with lost lore. Section 13: And Modern Terraces, reviving sustainable futures. Section 14: Each memory plays like a softly spoken litany, guiding your mind toward quiet reflection. Your gaze lifts to the heavens where constellations align in patterns reminiscent of quipu knots and terraced glyphs. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a braided trail of stars. Callback, unlocked cosmic highways echo earthly canals. You breathe in rhythm with the night, each inhalation drawing in history's fragrance, each exhalation releasing binding thoughts. Joke 2: if stars could wink, they'd tease. We've watched you wander all night. The fire dwindles embers, dropping into ashen patterns that resemble floral mandalas. You trace their shapes with your eyes, seeing echoes of herbal petals and leaf veins. The world grows still, save for the soft murmur of water trickling from a nearby spring-fed trough, its lullaby, more ancient than any lullaby you've known. Now let your senses drift on that gentle current, the feel of cool stone beneath your fingertips, the scent of mountain herbs carried on the breeze, the distant call of nocturnal spirits. You are held between earth and sky past, and future herb and hearth. Let your breath slow as you settle into the warm cocoon of your blanket, the fire's final glow softening into darkness. Imagine the mountains folding around you, cradling the sleeping world in a silent embrace. Each herb you encountered, kokamaka, munya, yantenkile, now becomes a gentle guardian in your dreams, their scents weaving a tapestry of healing. Recall the hush of sacred springs, the rustle of terraced gardens, the soft hum of shamanic chants, and the alchemical hiss of modern greenhouses. Let these echoes fade into a single soothing harmony that resonates in your chest like a heartbeat. You're suspended between the earth's solid ground and the vast sky above. Each inhales, connecting you to mountain spirits. Each exhale, releasing lingering worries. Feel the night air cool against your skin, scented with mint and floral dew. In the distance, tiny lantern lights flicker along winding paths. A reminder that wherever your mind wanders, you can always find your way home. The embers of the fire sleep beneath ash, a warm promise of dawn's return. Now release the journey's weight. Allow images of mist-laden grottos, sun-drenched terraces, and moonlit gardens to dissolve into soft darkness. The herbs rest in your bloodstream, gentle strength, mild warmth, and quiet calm. Their legacy becomes your lullaby, whispering tales of resilience, renewal, and the timeless bond between humans and the healing earth. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself floating above those terraces, drifting among petals and stars, guided by ancient currents of water and memory. Drift deeper until you sink into the dream's embrace, carried by the soothing rhythm of history's heart.